As we face this recession that's coming, or maybe we're in one now, or stock market crash and interest rates rising and all the crazy stuff going on right now, is I have the opportunity to do some direct investing in businesses. I always ask entrepreneurs, what's plan B? And if you have a plan B, that terrifies me. Because entrepreneurs that burn their ships at the shore are way more successful than those that have a plan B. Don't go out and find plan B. And that might sound counterintuitive, but stay in your lane, talk to your customers, stay close to your customers, and find solutions. That's your plan B. You burned your ship. If plan B is, I can go back and live with my mom and work in the bank, that doesn't work.
Without further ado, Todd Clarke, thank you very much for sitting down with me, talking about Orion Advisor Solutions, and just kind of the family of companies, I will say, that helps advisor firms better serve their clients. Let's kind of start with a little bit of context on where Orion is today. I think I read that Orion employs over 1,000 people today, has hundreds of billions of dollars in management or advisement. Todd, kind of break it down for us. What does Orion do, first and foremost, and who's your primary customer?
A lot of questions there, Jake. That was good. Is that it for the evening?
Just those two.
Thanks for having me. Full disclosure, I was involved with Orion at the very beginning, and then things have changed and evolved over the years, and it continues to thrive. But I haven't been in the day-to-day operations of the business now officially since September of 2020. So it's been a couple of years since I've been involved in that day-to-day run. Right now what I'm doing is I teach at Creighton. I teach an entrepreneurship class. We've had Andrew come and talk, and I'm making sure I see all of you guys, and so we can get you maybe to come to our class sometime and talk at Creighton. And I've really enjoyed teaching and getting to know these students better. These kids are young, and they're energetic, and they're excited, and they're super smart. And I'm old and tired and been there, done that kind of a guy. And so it makes me feel young again when I get to interact with them. Creighton's a great institution, but there is no way I'd ever be a professor in my entire life. That bureaucracy of the academic world is just exhausting. And so I like to be able to fly in and teach. So that's what I've been doing lately. But Orion Today, I've got Case here. He's worked with me for a long time at Orion, so he's our truth checker. So if I look at Case, he'll be either nodding or kind of shrugging and going, seriously, I don't know what is this guy talking about? But today we have about 1,500 employees. We recently completed an acquisition, which puts us at about a little over $3 trillion in assets under administration. What we do is all the not sexy stuff when it comes to investing. So you have independent advisors out in the country today that are entrepreneurs, and they put out a shingle themselves saying, this is ABC investment firm. And they're not with big banks, they're not with Wall Street firms, they're not the Merrill Lynches or anything like that. They're just independent entrepreneurs. We help them at Orion accomplish that back office stuff. Some of it's asset management, some of it's doing statements, doing trades, data aggregation, billing, all of the stuff behind the scenes that allows them to focus on what they do best, which is being an advisor and meeting with their clients. And so it's a way for them as entrepreneurs to focus on what they do and outsource everything else, all the bad, non-sexy, boring stuff to Orion. And so you never, if we're doing what we do best, you'll never hear about us. You'll never know that Orion's there. We're kind of like the offensive lineman. If you're at a football game, when do you notice the offensive lineman? When there's a penalty, right? You're like, yeah, he's offsides, he was holding. That's when Orion gets recognized, and it's not good. And so it's when we make a mistake. And so that's where we are today. But where we started from is back in the day was very different.
Yeah.
But that kind of gives you an idea of where we are today. Did I
That's
answer
perfect.
all your questions or not?
I think you got most of them.
Okay, all right. Lob me another one if I missed one.
Perfect. Yeah, so you're right. Your dad, Patrick Clarke, started CLS Investments, which eventually, kind of snowballed all of these different solutions for advisors. But at the time, what he was doing was a little bit different, right? I mean, it was kind of innovative. Can you talk about why it might have been new or innovative during that time?
Absolutely. So my dad was one of those independent financial advisors. He had an advisory firm called CLS Investments. And what he was doing actually in the 80s was he was working with clients under a fee-based approach rather than a commission-based approach. And at the time, that was incredibly painfully innovative. And so he was meeting with clients in the Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas area and helping them with their financial plan, their retirement planning, and would simply charge a fee rather than charge a commission. And that was really, really new in the 80s. I graduated from college. Nobody would hire me. And so I went to work for my dad to help him run his financial advisory business, which I didn't know what that meant. But I needed a job, so I was like, hey, we'll see how this works. At the time, I was in my 20s, but I looked 14. And you're dealing a lot with old people, and they're successful old people. And, they don't trust somebody that looks 14 helping them with investments. And so I was really struggling. I was struggling with, I really don't like meeting with this grandmother at her kitchen table, fending off the cat while she signs this document and trying to get out of there. I knew that probably within the first 2 weeks of working with my dad, but it took me a few months before I got up enough guts to say, I don't really think this is, I just don't want to do this. And mainly because nobody else would hire me, right? But I did enjoy aspects of his business. I enjoyed the back office stuff that I was talking to you about. But what I really enjoyed was he had started to dabble a little bit about talking to other advisors about transitioning their business to fees. And I loved that because every day I could go meet with an entrepreneur and I could say, you're sitting on a gold mine here. Rather than meeting with clients under a commission-based approach, what if you transition to fees? And I love that aspect of it. And so my dad was kind enough to say, look, why don't you see if you can grow this? Why don't you see if there's anything there that this could turn into a business someday? And so he continued to meet with the grandmother at the kitchen table holding the cat while she signed the IRA documents. And I went out and started meeting with advisors, and fairly quickly we realized, hey, there's something to this. This business has some hope, and things kind of took off from there.
Absolutely. Kind of pulling on, I imagine, some of the teaching, some of the things you're doing now and you enjoy doing. In those days, kind of teaching advisors, hey, there's a whole nother realm over here that you're totally missing.
Yeah, there's some similarities, right? When you're teaching at Creighton versus in sales or in an advisory role with advisors, I think there's some similarities, and I found my passion. So it wasn't. I look, in kindergarten, I didn't raise my hand and say, "Oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. I want to be in the financial advisory business. This is fantastic." I know Joey wants to be a fireman, but this is me. I mean, I didn't want, that's not something that I had. And so, I think we do a disservice a lot to young people saying, find your passion and you'll never work another day in your life. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I think what you have to do is you have to find your passion in your work. And you got to go to work. And hopefully you can find an element of that you really, really enjoy. And that's what I had the good fortune of doing, was I found an element of that, my dad's financial advisory business, that if we could tweak it a little bit, I think I could really be passionate and enjoy that. And so I think if you're searching for your passion, it's good, keep searching, but I don't know, you just got to go to work, and hopefully you can find something about your day-to-day job that is really motivating and really passionate and that you really love. Now, truth is, at Orion, I don't know, I was probably passionate about 20% of it, and the rest of it bored me to death. I mean, it was painful, but that 20% got me up every day and got me going and kept me moving.
So it sounds like your dad was great at just giving you space, really saying, hey, you really enjoy this aspect of the business, run with it, try it, see if you can get it to work. And I know your brothers ended up joining the business as well, and some other businesses were started. It seemed like your dad was kind of an expert at just giving you some autonomy to try things.
Yeah, he had a few rules, and we didn't always keep them. But he had a few rules, and one of those rules is that each of us had kind of our own little kingdom, our own little area. I had the good fortune of coming in before my brother did, and I got to choose. And I was more into the sales and the distribution and the marketing side of it. That's what I was passionate about, and that's what I enjoyed. And he let me run with that. And when my brother joined a few years later, my brother is an operator. He's an accountant by birth, and enjoys the operating side of the business and is incredibly talented at that. And we had the good fortune of then not having to compete. A lot of family businesses, I think you get in trouble when you start to compete. And so we joke I was the promise maker and my brother Eric was the promise keeper. And so it kind of worked that way, and it allowed us to have our own silos and our own areas to develop and to grow, but yet we still had to work together. But we weren't on each other's toes all the time, because as Case will tell you, my brother and I are different. We're just different, wired differently. Same parents, they say. I don't, he's younger, he's bald. I'm older and still have some hair. So I don't know. They say we have the same parents, but we're very different. But that's my dad, by separating our silos, really allowed us to thrive and excel in those areas.
I can definitely relate. I have two older brothers. My grandfather started a business, and then my dad and my uncle took it over. Family businesses are tricky. There's definitely different dynamics that you have to deal with. You have to see those people at Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter, and
it can't. And he had a couple more rules, if I can dive into those, because I think they relate to a family business. One of those is if you see work, do work. I've got 4 kids. They're all out of the house now, thankfully. But it was kind of I don't know, maybe I was a mind game that I was playing as the dad, but do you guys ever fold the laundry and then you put it on the stairs for your kids to carry upstairs? It's amazing how that never goes upstairs. It's incredible, right? I mean, and it can sit there for a really long time, and they pass it multiple times during the day. Weeks can go on, and you're just like, wow. And so that I think in a family business, you have to have that attitude of see work, do work. So you can't be saying, this is my brother's job, this is this person's job, this isn't my job. In a startup business or in a family business, if you see work, you have to do work. And you have to hire people that when they see work, they do work. That's why my kids are unemployed, right? No, I'm just kidding. They have jobs. They have jobs. But it is interesting. That laundry would sit there for days just stacked on the stairs, and they would pass it on the way up. And you can nag, but that never really works either. So see work, do work is really critical in a family business. And I think it is in a startup. You have to be willing to do the accounting and the bills one day. You have to be willing to do the sales. You have to be willing to do all of those if there's work. And then, as you were talking about, Jake, there comes a time, and we always said it was the 5 o'clock, when we break bread, we have to be brothers. We have to be a father-son. We have to let that work stay at work. And man, that's a really, really hard rule to keep when you're in a small, so when I joined my dad's company, there were 7 employees. I was number 7. So we haven't had 1,500. We didn't start with 1,500 employees. It was small. And so you go to work all day, and then you end up at my dad's place over the weekend or something like that, and you have a tendency to want to talk business, especially in a small business. You can't, it's your identity, it's who you are. You eat, sleep, and breathe that business. And so following that rule really became our spouse's call, you remember we got to break bread. And so our spouses were much better at keeping that rule and reminding us of the importance of when you're at the dinner table, we're not talking about mutual fund statements and data downloads and all of that stuff. We need to be a family. And so those 3 rules of having your own silos and your own kingdom, if you see work, do work, and then that third one of there comes a time where we just need to break bread, are really important for a family business, because you want the family to survive. The business may or may not, but you want the family to survive. And so it's tough. But blood is thicker than water. And so there's great things about a family organization as well.
Absolutely. I think that as I was reading, the business is almost 50 years old at this point. Started in 1975.
My dad's financial advisory business started then. The outsourcing element started in the early 90s, but go with it. It sounds really good.
So I was going to ask, how does a business, as you're growing, scaling, you're hiring hundreds of employees, how do you stay nimble? How do you stay innovative as you're bringing on so many people?
Yeah. And I think Case would agree with this. We're not nearly as nimble as we were back in the day. Back in the day, we could pivot much quicker than that. One of the things that I hear often in my role at Creighton is I have entrepreneurs tell me about their business idea and pitch me their different ideas. One of the things that you'll hear business founders say is, I can't wait to get out of sales. I can't wait until I can hire somebody who's going to run my sales, because I'm focusing on this. This is my strength, and I need somebody else to go sell this. That, even if you hate sales, that's a huge red flag for your business. Look at, I was telling you this earlier, look at Tesla. Who sells more Teslas than anyone? Elon. Why does he, by the way, why do you think he wants Twitter?
To sell cars.
It's to sell cars. It has nothing to do with this greater human right of freedom of speech.
Or his ego.
It's all about his budget for marketing is zero. So, when's the last time you saw a Twitter or a Tesla commercial? It doesn't happen. You see a lot of Ford, a lot of GM commercials, but that's his marketing arm. And so I think case in point, he's very, very close to the sales process. Now, he has other salespeople across the country, but he owns that still. And I think that's what's critical of a business staying nimble, is you need your founder, you need your leader. She or he needs to be really, really close to that customer. And we always said back at Orion is you need your leaders who carry the bag. That means they walk in and they're meeting face to face with an advisor. If you're not next to that customer on a regular basis, you lose your touch, you lose your ability to come back to the office and say, wow, I saw 7 advisors in 2 days and they all have this problem. We got to fix this. Or is this another business we ought to be getting into? What can we accomplish? And startups especially that go out and hire a real slick salesperson, I hate seeing that. I hate seeing that because that founder has to be in the weeds and with the sales organization, really, really close. So I think that's the key to being nimble, is staying close to that customer.
Yeah, and you probably get a really good perspective on that customer's problems. And I think that's another one of the components that really leads to success is in entrepreneurship specifically, is solving a very specific problem. But as a founder, I imagine you have to love that problem, otherwise you're never going to stick with it long enough to see success.
Yeah, when I went to college, I majored, and this is a long time ago, I actually majored in entrepreneurship, which was one of the first times it was out. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, was this entrepreneurship degree. And I did that because it was the quickest way out, right? I was like, how can I get out of school the fastest? And that entrepreneurship, hey, sounds great. I'll do that. And back in those days, you spent a tremendous amount of time on building a business plan. And so we put together, I had 2 other partners. We put together a huge, you guys know what a 3-ring binder is? I'm an old guy, but if you know what a 3-ring binder is, a big, thick 3-ring binder of a plan with funding and everything you can imagine was in that plan. And we were going to open up an Ace hardware store. So one semester we put the plan together. The next semester we went out and got funding to accomplish this. This is 3 college kids doing this for college credit. And the 3rd semester, we opened up an Ace Hardware. Unbelievable experience. The very first week we opened it up, a 500-year flood washed out the building we were in.
Oh.
Gone. That's when I realized that 3-ring binder with that plan, what a freaking joke, right? I mean, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? That's Mike Tyson or something like that. And that is really, really true. And I think that entrepreneurs, you have to have a plan, and you have to communicate that plan over and over and over again. However, you have to act more than you plan. And it used to be when I was in college, the plan was the thing. Acting was something that they never told you about, taking those action steps. Now I think the planning is done on a 3x5 card, and it's a pitch that of something you tell your partners, something you tell your funding sources. It's an idea, it's a concept, and then you have to go act and try it and take a couple of steps and learn from that and get feedback from that. And that gets back, even as you get bigger and you start to grow, you have to get that feedback from that customer. You have to act way more than you plan. And I've got a buddy that we have breakfast every 90 days or so. He's got a great business idea, and he tells me about it for the past 15 years every breakfast. He never wants me to steal it either, so I can't tell you what it is. But he's planning on doing it. And it's all this planning. And instead, what you need to do is just take a couple of minimal steps and act, learn, and then plan from that. And then act and learn and plan from that. So I think that's really important as an entrepreneur, that you spend more time acting than planning.
Yeah. Is there any, one piece of practical advice to help somebody get over the fear of just taking that first step? I know it's important to act, but let's say, I think we all deal with some self-doubt, and really taking an entrepreneurial leap is a big thing. Any one or two pieces of practical advice to get somebody just over that and just try something?
I'll give you an example of this. So one of my students years ago put together a pretty good plan to do a men's clothing line. What is that? What it's called? A line? Sure. Men's clothing line.
Sure.
Kind of in the I'd say business casual area, and it was impressive. It was a good plan, but it would take it'd take millions to get this done. What he wanted to accomplish, it was a good plan. It was a good business. He had no experience in this area, and so to take that leap was daunting. He probably had more courage than brains, so he might have taken it, but he had no money, thankfully. And so, but what he did start to do was shoes. So he narrowed it down from a clothing line down to shoes, and rather than manufacturing those shoes, he kind of runs. I sound like George Costanza here, but an import-export. But with these shoes, and it's a baby step, I guess is what I'm saying. And so I think what you try to do to take that first step is try to distill it down to the very smallest thing you can do. And that might be, why don't I contact 10 potential customers and get their thoughts and their ideas? I think those kinds of small steps build confidence. They increase our faith. They increase our desire to take that next step, or they totally blow it out of water. And you go, man, maybe that wasn't such a great idea. And you move on to the next thing. So you got to dummy it down all the way to what are some small steps that I can take today and act on those rather than building a plan.
Sure, that makes sense. Or starting in, spending a whole bunch of money, and then burning hard that way. It's better to fail fast, right?
Absolutely.
So I want to open it up. I've asked a whole bunch of questions. Certainly, there are some questions in the audience. If you're all right with that, for some people to ask questions. Levi?
So, if you had to choose 2 or 3 things that you want each of your students to walk away from your Foundations of Entrepreneurship class, what are those 2 or 3 things, and then how do you teach them?
I still think that. I don't know if I have 2 or 3. How's that? But here's the one I want them to walk away with. I still think that there is a stigma about being an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is somebody that can't get a job doing anything else. And that's still out there. Now, we feel differently in this room. And because we network with other entrepreneurs, you may not, that is still, there's a bias out there that he doesn't really have a job, right? He's or she does this because they can't get hired somewhere else or something like that. And so a lot of my students always take, most of them actually, so I'm not doing a very good job of teaching. Most of them take the safe job. So I have them, usually their senior year, and most of them take the safe job. So if they've got an opportunity to work at Union Pacific Railroad, great company, so this isn't a knock, or go to a startup with 10 people, and they go home over Christmas break and they're sitting down with mom and dad who have forked out Creighton levels of tuition, what do they take? Yeah. And so what I try to do is teach them to think like an entrepreneur inside of UP. And that's a challenge. That is really challenging. And so, you can't really teach that in a class, but I have had the good fortune over several years that I stay in touch with them. And those, sometimes they're dying a day at a time in a cubicle. And so you talk to them about ways that they can think entrepreneurially inside of their world. And that's something you really can't teach in the class. They have to experience that cubicle before they can begin to relate to that. So I think there's still that stigma. I think parents of my students would much rather say that their son's VP at Union Pacific than he's working at a startup with a couple of his buddies in their garage trying to do some things. And so trying to get people to realize that mindset of an entrepreneur, that idea of plan, act, and learn, and then plan, act, and learn, and repeating that, you can do that at Union Pacific. You can do that at First National. You can do that at Mutual. And hope that I plant that seed enough that they realize, I really am an entrepreneur and I need to go do something. You know, I was talking before we got started, I've got a son-in-law who's a programmer, software developer. That's what he likes to call himself. And he's an entrepreneur that happens to be a software developer, but he doesn't know that yet. So he's working for a very large company, and he's really struggling, and he's questioning the whole thing. And I'm trying to coax him, saying, hey, go work with a firm of 10 people, 5 people, 20 people, and learn that you've got some skills beyond just coding, and there's some other things out there, and it's exciting. But it's a hard thing to get people to see that when there's a mortgage that needs to be paid, and there's health insurance benefits, and there's all these kinds of things. For people in this room, you guys get that. We're speaking the same language, but you get outside of this room, and this is crazy talk, is what it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Craig?
So, being part of the original team behind Orion Advisor Solutions and watching it grow through some recessions, some market crashes, some corrections. Obviously, we're in some kind of correction, potentially a recession or something now. What should founders be thinking about, and how can they continue to grow their business when they're young and going into this market that's much different than maybe what they've experienced their entire adult lives?
Yeah, it's scary right now what's going on, and whether you believe this side or that side, or this publication or this news station or not, it's all scary, right? And I think that it's times like this, though, that actually businesses start to pop up all over the place, and opportunities are there. So my recommendation, again, we already talked about it, is to make sure you stay really close to your customer. One of the things we did was we started out talking to advisors about transitioning their business to fees. We started to grow in assets, and we started to realize we didn't have systems in-house to properly report on those assets and take care of them. So we developed our own in-house system, a portfolio accounting system, from that problem. And then we said, wow, I wonder if there's other companies out there that we could sell our portfolio accounting system to. And so we saw it as an opportunity, our own problem. We saw as an opportunity, and it expanded into a different company called Orion Tech. And so I think, but we would have never done that had we not stayed really close to the customer. The second thing is, and I really, is I have the opportunity to do some direct investing in businesses, which I'm terrible at, by the way, so don't come up to me afterwards. I'm terrible, but I always ask entrepreneurs, what's plan B? And if you have a plan B, that terrifies me. Because entrepreneurs that burn their ships at the shore are way more successful than those that have a plan B. So as we face this recession that's coming, or maybe we're in one now, or stock market crash and interest rates rising and all the crazy stuff going on right now, don't go out and find plan B. And that's might sound counterintuitive, but stay in your lane, talk to your customers, stay close to your customers, and find solutions. That's your plan B. You burned your ship. If plan B is, I can go back and live with my mom and work in the bank, that doesn't work. Then plan A is dead. It's dead. Often I see business owners that very successful and sell their business, get a pile of cash, and then they get together with 3 or 4 people that have done that, and they start a new venture. Those never work. Those rarely work. I shouldn't say never, but they rarely work, because plan B is, I'll just go home and count my money. And so I think when you go through these difficult times, it's very, very tempting to come up with plan B. And as soon as you do, plan A is done. It's done. You got to burn that ship. So plan ways to stay close to your customers and develop new solutions and new products and new things that you can do for those customers. But plan B is at going to work somewhere else. That becomes plan A.
You're going to wind up doing it if you start planning it already.
Yeah, it never.
Pans out.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question just about like financial planners and like general trends. But it seems to me like just for the average person, it's almost easier to get by now without a financial planner because there's so many much good technology out there. It seems like, oh, they're just using the same stuff I'm using. So my question for you is just like, what kind of like big trends do you see in the whole industry of financial planners, specifically when it comes to like these new technologies?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and that was, especially a number of years ago, that was a huge fear of mine that kept me up at night of, man, the computer, this iPad's going to replace the advisor, and that was my customer, right, was that advisor. And so a couple of things have been happening there. One is that advisors have had to embrace technology, and the advisors that have embraced technology and exposed their clients to that technology have actually thrived. Then instead of advisors that said, "Oh, you don't look that up on Yahoo. You don't need this," or "Put your phone down. We don't want to put an app on your phone." Those that have embraced that, I think they've done really, really well. The other thing, though, that I've learned with that question is everyone at some point, hopefully, gets to a certain dollar amount where this gets serious.
So is it like you now just go for like richer people, or?
It depends. It depends. Some people have $50,000 in an IRA, and that's all of a sudden that's serious. Some people have $5 million in their account, and it's not serious yet. It kind of depends. It depends upon their education level. It depends upon their confidence level. It depends upon some of us. Quite honestly, I'm the type, I just like to go talk to somebody, right? And just, hey, here's kind of what I'm thinking. What are you seeing out there? I can't get that off of my computer. Maybe that's why I'm still in therapy. Right? I don't know. But so I think at some point, what I've learned is at some point it gets serious. And at that level, people like to have that expert, if that expert has embraced technology. If they've shunned that technology, then we've seen those advisors really struggle. Actually, they've gone away. So, good question. But that's something that's changed. And had we not been in front of our customers on a regular basis, we wouldn't have been able to help them with that. So we got in the app business of developing apps for our advisors to use for their clients. In simple financial planning tools and those types of things through technology. So, good.
Yeah.
When it comes to staying in front of your customer and trying to solve those solutions, as you said, how do you think about making sure that you're staying in your zone of genius and you're not trying to get too bothered with getting in this and that and that?
I'm not very good at that. Yeah, I think I've got ADD, and so if there's a squirrel, I'm chasing that squirrel, and I'm making promises, and then I'm coming back to talk to my brother that, hey, I made this promise, help me out here. That's something our business has really struggled with. It's much better since I left at staying focused and staying driven towards a consistent goal. But the key was we had a good partnership with my brother and myself. I was out making promises, and then he would say, man, we can't do that. What are you talking about? That's not something that we do. And so I think I shouldn't say all entrepreneurs. I think I'm going to steal a line from Kelly Mann. Do you guys know Kelly? Some of you may know Kelly. If you marry the problem, you're going to have that. Because if you're married to the problem, you're always going to be out there trying to find it. A lot of entrepreneurs don't marry the problem, they marry the solution. And that one never works out real well in the long run. So I think you got to find yourself a good partner, so that somebody that can keep you grounded, because you're going to keep chasing squirrels. So I don't have a good. I'm not the guy to talk to about that one.
Would you recommend always having a co-founder? Do you think there's?
I don't know. I don't know about that. We had a good fortune. My brother and I are very different, and we're able to work together, and that was there. If you don't have a co-founder, it's important that you have an advisory board, and that can be a very informal advisory board of, here are the 3 or 4 people that I go to when I have a new idea, or I have some struggles or some issues or some questions. Or it could be very formalized, where you're meeting with them every 90 days. They don't even, I'll tell you what, they don't have to be paid. I think people are willing to share their advice and really help out entrepreneurs and small businesses. Those people are out there. And so I'd encourage you to have an advisory board if you don't have a co-founder, or if you have a co-founder that's just like you definitely need that. You need that advisory board as well.
Makes sense. Any other questions? Yeah.
Following up on that.
Since I didn't answer your question, right? I deserve this, so.
When you're approaching that, ready, fire, aim approach, like you said, pretty much taking action, how do you know when the strategy you took isn't working anymore? So, like you said, some people get married to that solution, and especially with us. I mean, a lot of startups and entrepreneurs are starting with lean budgets. So if you dive too deep into a solution,
Your customers will tell you.
Okay.
Your customers will tell you, or potential customers will tell you, if that ready, fire, aim worked or if it didn't work. And that's why founders that stay in their office or stay in their house and they're not out talking to those customers, you're missing out. You're missing out. You can't hire that away. Eventually, now obviously, Orion has salespeople all over, but you have to have someone that's carried that bag that's still out there doing that. So they'll tell you.
Andrew?
Jump in. That's not the. So one thing that worked really well for us, so we're about trying to figure that out, is forcing those potential customers to not just say, yeah, I would buy this before you ever write a line of code, but getting them to sign a letter of intent, because it's amazing how quickly it changes when this one-page document that I typed up, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I have to send this to legal, all these things, so they treat it like a real contract. Probably a little bit different for financial advising. That's a little bit of a different game.
No, I don't.
But at least that
You would think so, but not really. And I think that's a great idea. It's one thing to talk to a potential customer. Would you buy this? Oh yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to do that. Versus when you have a document in front of them and they're like, oof, this may not be such a great idea. So you do have to push it. You have to push it. I think it's a great point, Andrew.
Well, I think the last question that we always ask every speaker that comes in, one of our core values is helping first. What can the people in this room and the entrepreneurship community do to help you, Todd?
Help me? Oh man. That's
Loaded question.
I I think I applaud you guys for being involved in a group like this, the startup group. I think it's a lot of times. I think entrepreneurs get very lonely. It gets really lonely being an entrepreneur, and so to have this type of a group, I think is fantastic. And I hope that you're also networking in other organizations and in other groups within your industry and within the circle that you're in. I think one of the mistakes, though, that I made that I would wish I would change or had done differently is when you're networking like this, a lot of times you come to this meetings going, what can I get out of this? And when I finally changed my attitude about, hey, what can I give to this group? How can I contribute to this group? How can I contribute to the entrepreneur next to me? Our business changed. It changed drastically. And that's not just with the startup. I know you guys are in other organizations and in other groups and go to different conferences and things. But when you go there going, okay, what can I get? Man, that just never works. In fact, you walk out of that meeting going, that was a waste of time. I'm not going back. And your engagement drops significantly. And so what you could do for me is in a group like this is to help each other out. Help out the entrepreneurs next to you. Help out the startup companies next to you. How can you help them out? And you might say, well, I don't even know if overnight oats are really overnight. Are they? Do you do them overnight?
Yeah.
I don't believe it. I think you do some of them during the day. Do they turn out differently if you do them during the day?
Not really.
See, right there. So how can you help? How can you in a totally different industry, in a different world, how can you help the overnight oats people? What's the connection? Who do you know and who can help them so that you can grow this business? That's what Omaha needs. Omaha needs people that come to organizations and things like this saying, how can I help? Well, how can I contribute instead of what can I get out? So that's my.
Thank you. Let's have a round of applause.